All right, Job chapter 10. Again, let's call this one Chipping Away Through Futility, but this time subtitle it 1984, as in George Orwell's 1984, which we reference from time to time, and why hopefully will become clear before too long as we look at Job start this chapter in a way that he has mentioned in previous chapters with the simple statement, I loathe my life. He mentioned that in the last chapter. We didn't emphasize it, but he's repeating it here as he goes into the ways in which, again, he's questioning God as to why do you torture or seem to treat so badly those who serve you. He's going to call himself just his creation, but it's going to carry the implication that it's that portion of his creation that actually serves him, while on the other hand, the plans of the wicked seem to prosper. At which point Job is going to say, if that's the situation, then why did you form me? Going back to that initial thought that he starts with, I hate my life. Describing his condition as one who has been poured out like milk and curdled, and that really spoke to me in the sense that Job feels like he is simply being left to rot. But it would be one thing if he were simply left to rot. He goes back to talking about the futility of his condition when he says, as soon as I pick up my head, the attacks start all over again. Not necessarily making it clear whether or not it's indicating that he might be picking his head up too much in pride or just as a natural function of recovery. Either way, it's a sign for the enemy to start attacking him all over again. And at this point, he still feels like the one who has made him the enemy is God, understanding that these chapters are still spinning on that fundamental misconception that God is the one doing this to him. But at the end of the chapter, he's going to beg God to just leave him alone. And the irony of that is the one thing that he wants is the one thing he is not going to be able to get, because in the next chapter, we're going to see quite possibly the most dim-witted response to this point from the next friend to step up and say something, and that is Zophar. And that is going to go back to some other themes that we have also seen in previous chapters, and that is just like Job at the end of the last chapter said, I would speak up and vent my frustrations to God, but I'm scared that he would attack me even worse if I was honest about how I felt. And then it goes back to what we might have seen, I think, in chapter 3, where he says, the very things that I fear, the things that I dread are the very things that happen to me. Thus, 1984, in which the main character, Winston, describes thought crime and face crimes as punishable by Big Brother, that ever-present force that is always looking for signs of insubordination, punishing any thoughts, facial expressions, and especially any words that would suggest disloyalty. And that is the situation that Job seems to find himself in, because whether or not it suggests disloyalty, anything that he seems to say can and will be used against him in the next trial that he has to face. Understanding, as we've said, he simply wants to be left alone at the end of chapter 10, and that is actually going to mark the entrance of possibly the most antagonizing response he has gotten to this point. Understanding that even though Job believes that it is God, and even though this story is old, Satan at this point is functioning in Job's life as a kind of wicked Alexa or wicked Siri, listening out for any genuine expression of pain that Job might manifest so that he can push or twist the knife in that spot even further. Which reminded me of a warning that Jesus gave in Matthew 18 when he said that temptations in life are inevitably going to come, but woe to the one through whom temptations come. Understanding that when he says that they are inevitable, that seems to point to the work of Satan. However, Satan too often gets agency through us as well. And that is exactly what Job is dealing with here. Because in addition to the things that Satan is directly doing to him, Satan is getting extra mileage through Job's friends. And the danger in that may be twofold, because as Zophar goes on to rekindle Job's anger, he is not only increasing the likelihood that Job might sin against them, but he's also increasing the likelihood that in his anger, Job might sin against God. So understanding that in the first 2 chapters, 3 times it's already described Job as a blameless man, especially in this situation, one who is being provoked, God literally says, without reason. The irony in Job's friends trying to get him to confess his guilt is that they are providing the kind of provocation that's actually stacking their own, which is why by the end of the book of Job, God calls Job to sacrifice for the sins of these 3 friends who, even though they might have been well-intentioned, They were presumptuous in providing extra mileage in Satan's efforts to tempt Job and further derail his life.